Gen Z is entering the workforce with new perspectives and expectations.
In this podcast, we're here to listen to their stories and experiences, their successes and frustrations, and help employers understand the mindset and perspectives of the up-and-coming workforce.
Employers can't dictate what their young employees find meaningful. What they can do, however, is empower them to create their own sense of purpose and authentic connections.
Our curriculum is designed to help them do exactly that. East Valley Leader Lab is committed to paving the way for more curious, engaged, and connected young professionals in the workplace.
Hi, I'm Amanda Stradling, and this is Timm. We are East Valley Leader Lab. This is our podcast, Mind and Body at Work. We're about halfway through our second season, and we've been talking about helping Gen Z thrive at work. We've had lots of different guests, Gen Z and their managers, and we've talked about so many different topics throughout this whole time, but some definite themes have emerged that we want to point out for you, our listeners.
Exactly.
Any you want to bring up?
Sure. One of the things that's made the strongest impression on me is we talk about the importance of history. In fact, we did a whole show, right, about history.
Yes.
And how we are shaped by our histories. And those are stories, and they can sort of drive our life, or we can decide to create a story that will help us accomplish the things that we most want to accomplish. And those I think what struck me a lot in this season was how the generation gap, especially between, say, Gen Z and Gen X, just illustrates how different the histories have been for those two different populations and how they show up differently at the workplace, right? That's how we started this, was we were hearing and reading a lot about how Gen Z is showing up differently in the workplace. And I think we've started to get a bit of an understanding of that. I think it was Ruby and Zatara's show, and they've chosen, not to. They both entered the workforce. They've chosen to kind of do things on their own, and they really helped me understand what it was from their upbringing that has shaped the way they feel about the workplace and what's being expected of them there.
Absolutely. Our values were shaped by our history. And if we have a history that is totally different than someone 20 years older than us, then we're going to have some different sets of values, right? And we're going to work differently around those values. Rachel Hansen was one of our guests, and she's kind of a millennial, and I think she really has done a great job, and I think she talked about it being a bridge between those two gaps.
Right.
And I feel like she was all about just compassion. She was very empathetic, and she was very good at facilitating kind of conversations between these differences of values.
Right. And she worked in a university environment where she was dealing with young people that hadn't entered the workforce yet. And then she had people working for her that were Gen Z young people. And it gave her, I think, a unique perspective and a real a lot of empathy about what's going on as these people enter the workforce. And, she shared with us some empathy also for the leadership and
yeah, she did.
How this is changing, how they need to lead.
We can't get on the same page if we're not empathetic and if we're not curious, if we're not in that opening type of mood. And that's a theme that I think rose up again and again. Aliento, they've done a really great job at holding spaces. They called it, like, creating spaces for sharing, for bringing up your goals, your concerns.
Yes.
And so that spaces was a big part of being empathetic.
Yeah, Lupe talked about that a lot. And I think, what's really impressive about Aliento, and they participated in two of our shows, they've created a model for leadership. Essentially, they're using leadership, helping these kids become leaders in their communities, in order to help them cope with the generation gap and the polarity in politics and
Yes.
all of these different things. And so that's one of the solutions. I think we've heard about. If we can catch these young people as they're entering or even before they enter the workforce and give them some of this leadership, I'd like to say embodied leadership would help a lot. It will no doubt improve their chances in entering this changing workplace.
Yeah. Wow. That's such a good insight. I love that leadership isn't just the vehicle that we're using to achieve our goal, but it can also it can resolve a lot of the problems and help us overcome a lot of the hurdles that we're facing, that Gen Z is facing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a tendency to think of leadership as the people at the top, the few people at the top, the people setting the direction, but we really need everybody to master leadership. Everybody needs to master the leadership of their own life, and they will be more successful in the workplace and probably become the workplace leaders of the future if they do that.
This isn't about the recap of our season, but it's kind of about just back to our core curriculum. The symbol for warrior reminds me a lot of leader. And I love it because you have this line, and then you have the person standing there, but you have someone that steps forward and rises up. And from their heart, their hands are outstretched, and they're stopping this axe from falling on everybody else.
Yeah.
So leadership does solve those problems. And we all need to be able to have the skills and be empowered to step up in whatever our sphere is, and lead. And that does come from our bodies, right?
Exactly. And Aliento really, really role models that and is creating that with their clients. It's very impressive.
Definitely.
One of the other things that came up in our show with Lupe that is just a very human aspect of this. You would think from some of the complaints we hear from organizations about managing and hiring Gen Z that they're not really taking work seriously. And it struck me that Lupe was talking about, we asked, so, what do you and your friends talk about when you're not working? And she said, we're talking about work, right? We're talking about our experiences. We're trying to help each other out. We're sharing stories. We're comparing and contrasting what other people are finding. And I was just, I was a little surprised by that. They are engaged. They're just engaged in a little different way than maybe some of us were used to in a different generation.
I think one of the things that Bean Chain has done to help their workers be engaged is giving them ownership over specific aspects of the company, which was really neat at a coffee shop. Someone like Angel was hired as a barista, right?
Right.
But then she got ownership over their social media platform, and she's really ran with that. And different employees get different nights to plan different events and things like that. And I think that ownership is that's a really great thing for retention, but just also for the well-being of the people to know that they have something that they're personally contributing that they can engage with. And I think that helps, just feel better about your job.
I agree. I think that's one of the lessons that's come up for leaders and managers that are maybe struggling a little bit with managing this incoming generation.
Absolutely.
Let's see, what else do we have?
Well, John Scudder, who is an HR manager at a public school system here in Arizona, but he had tons of experience at every level of education.
Right.
He was a principal.
Yep.
He was such an interesting person that I feel like has embodied really good leadership skills. But he talked about kind of things we've already been saying. Key motivations for work are purpose, autonomy, and mastery. And I think it's important to help Gen Z realize that they have a sense of purpose built within them in their bodies that they can get in touch with that, and they can bring that to work. There's ways to apply the things that they care about personally to the work that's happening in the world around them, and then give them some autonomy to put that into action. And then with time and with some mentorship, they really can develop some mastery in that area.
Exactly. And, this isn't intended to be a commercial, but, this is part of what's behind our Gen Z version of our leadership curriculum, right? Our message to the leaders and the managers out there is that you don't need to take responsibility for all of the concerns that this new generation is bringing in. They can take responsibility for a lot of this stuff. And that's what we're using embodied leadership to provide them with, right? To show them how they can take that responsibility for what it is they really care about, get really clear about that, understand how the way how their history has them showing up a little different than the people that they're working for, and how to bridge that gap. So those things that John talked about were essentially the things that we're offering to give to the people entering the workforce, so that management doesn't have to try to manage all of that in addition to getting the work done.
Absolutely. That's great. Any other key themes and takeaways?
Yeah,
it's been an exciting season so far.
So you mentioned John Scudder. It was just and I would say all the people we have representing management and leadership that we've had on the show have been really very empathetic, right? So we started this because we thought there was a bit of a communication breakdown.
Yes.
And I still think there is. But the people that have been on the show have shown a lot of empathy. At the same time, we're also hearing from some guests, and we've got another guest coming up in the near future, who spent a lot of years in HR and is basically hearing from the organizations that leadership isn't really interested in investing in these young kids. They'd rather just hire them, and if they leave, hire more until they get the ones that stick. And so I want to come back to that as we're wrapping up and we're talking about our future shows, but that was just, there's a big contrast, I think, between what we've heard on this show and what we're hearing is going on out there. So that's something we might want to look into a little more.
Definitely. It's been great to shine a spotlight on the wonderful managers and leaders that we have met. But we know that that's not the experience in every workplace.
Exactly. Was there another show that you'd like to highlight, or a theme?
It hasn't been released yet, but an episode that really stood out to me was Olalu's, who has worked in the military. And he had some really great insights for Gen Z. So that's an exciting one to watch. It's going to be released soon. He brought a really great energy to it. He's fairly young himself.
Yeah. And he gave us a perspective on the armed services that we hadn't gotten from many of our other guests.
Yep.
It was really, really interesting, and I think provided some really good advice for managers and leaders in the corporate world. Definitely.
I mean, if the military can get some flexibility around training upcoming workers, surely corporations can as well, right?
Yeah. I'm sure they can too, because they're nimble and they move fast. That's what they're known for. Two of our most recent guests, Russell and Nick, we're talking about how rapidly things are changing with AI, and giving us some perspective on the impact that's going to have on people entering the workforce and already in the workforce. And it was just, it was interesting to me. They were giving me a better picture of how drastically things are going to change with AI entering the workforce. And, Russell had some pretty radical advice for people entering the workforce. Like, you need to utilize AI, and you need to find and solve big problems for the companies you work for
Out the gate.
right out of the gate.
Yep.
Maybe even before you get hired, come in with some, some information about their company and ways that that you think, things they might need to attend to be even more successful.
Yeah, I think he said that AI can really help unlock your superpowers. He was talking about a lot of neurodiverse Gen Z workers, and how AI is a way to dig into the intense areas of focus that some Gen Zs are experiencing. And I love that Nick described AI kind of like a jetpack. That these technological...
And everybody's got it.
Yes.
Everybody that gets hired has the jetpack. And the young people know how to use it better than anybody else.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I was a little... I thought maybe Russell's advice was almost too radical. I was interested to hear it. But after hearing Nick and his perspective on the way things are changing, and everybody's going to have a jetpack, and what's going to distinguish you from the next person, people are going to need some radical approaches to make their name and be a productive part of the organization.
Absolutely. One of the things I love most about as this technology is really coming to the forefront and the way it's changing work is that it is dialing in on the importance of the human nature of what we do and the way we connect with each other, the way we cooperate, the way we listen. All those human things are so important, and those are skills that Gen Z, they're coming with some of their own, but they're things that we can keep helping them develop as well.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it cuts both ways. Organizations can view these changes as a time to put the focus on what is it that humans really bring to the organization, and how do we value that and make sure that we keep that and generate that while we're benefiting from the technology. Rather than thinking of it, this is going to replace, we don't need as many people, we don't need the people to do this, we don't need people to do that. If the focus is on that, people are not going to be interested.
Nick, who his episode's not out yet, but I like that he suggested carving out a weekly mini sabbatical, like a half day, full day.
Yeah, that was an interesting.
Where you're dialing in on some of those human things, like what you really care about, and more the direction, less about the tool, like the specifics, aiming that arrow.
Right. It could be about a tool, but it was about how are we going to use it, what would it look like if we actually put this in place, and then the humanistic aspects as well.
Yep, and I think that time of reflection is so valuable.
Yep. So should we look forward to what's coming in the rest of the season?
Yes.
So as you know, we have a guest coming up soon, Ellen Rame, who I know from my past life at Intel Corporation. She worked at HR at Intel, and then was a consultant for many years after Intel, and most recently has been working with young people entering the workforce, kind of just like we are. And she's the first sort of Gen Z consultant advisor we've run into. So we're looking forward to, and she's got a new book out, so we're looking forward to hearing about that.
Cool.
And talking about the advice that she's giving these young folks just entering the workforce. And then I said I wanted to come back to something, and that's this issue with leadership. So if in fact, there's organizations out there that think, this is a numbers game, we'll just keep hiring them till we find the ones that stick. I would like to talk to those leaders and try to understand that perspective better, because most of the leaders we've had on this show, have been more empathetic than that. They're worried about each and every new young person applying and being successful if possible.
Yeah, and they're doing specific things to retain them.
Yes,
and to invest in them.
Good advice for other managers to try to retain and find these folks. So I think it'd be interesting to, if we can find some of these leaders that'd be willing to come on and share that perspective and just have a good conversation about it. Definitely.
I believe we may also get a few more Gen Z guests pretty soon. So some more stories starting out and beginning and what that experience looks like now versus how it used to.
We've got a continuing pipeline of young people with different perspectives, different stories. And so we'll continue doing that as kind of the heart of this season. I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Cool. Anything else about the season so far?
No, I hope that you're excited about those episodes we mentioned that aren't out yet, and I'm excited for the new ones we have yet to film. This is going to be great.
So thanks for sticking with us through the season. We hope you're getting things that you can use out of it, and we hope that you'll consider the possibility of using embodied leadership as one of the tools that you use to integrate and help these young folks succeed in your organization. So thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Be well and keep moving.
This has been Mind and Body at Work with the East Valley Leader Lab. Please click on the link in the show notes for a description of our newest offer, Helping Gen Z Thrive at Work. This is our embodiment training to help new young workers integrate into your organization.
As always, if this content resonates with you and your cares, please like, share, and/or subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever it is you get your podcast. Be well and keep moving.